Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. UNN is the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And we discuss what we call the real news. We have a newscast that comes out through our online distribution platform on our website at unitednetwork.earth, and it's released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in our newscasts, we talk about what's really happening on our planet. We talk about what's happening locally, we talk about regional stories, and then we talk about what's happening in our universe, in the multiverse. Some of this stuff is really going to blow your mind because we think it's really important that you know what's really happening so you can make choices about how you want to lead your life. And if you don't know what's going on, then how are you supposed to know what to choose? Right? This world is actually a lot different than what people think, and we're here to shed some light on that. And this podcast in particular is a week in review. So like I said, we have newscasts that come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it's possible you may have missed one of those newscasts. They can be kind of long depending on the news day, or perhaps you're not a member, so you don't get the news right when it comes out. This is a great episode to listen to, kind of like a weekly, wrap up of the things that we talked about, some of the highlights. So it's a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed or share this podcast with other people you think might be interested in what we talk about. And we highlight a bunch of our stories. We talk about the stories that are made by our field messengers. We talk about stories regarding the new Earth and where our planet is going. We talk about what's happening around the world. And like I said, the multiverse, which extends far beyond our planet, which I know a lot of people's minds are just going to just explode right when I said that, right? A lot of people don't know there's more beyond the universe. So we can talk about this stuff because we have access to the highest security clearance on the planet. So we are not reliant on anyone to give us a call and say, hey, I've got some news for you. We are getting this information from what used to be called the Alpha system. It is now called the Light system. It's a different system. And it is the light side of the multiverse. And that is where our planet is at right now. We are in the process of converting over to a fully light system, and things are going to look a lot different. And what you're seeing now play out are people who weren't really in power, but they thought they were in power, maybe on the human side of stuff. And this is like the longest death scene in the world. Not that we wish them death. We wish that they would see the light, literally, and help us out, help us with the restoration of the planet. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. Let's see. Do I have any announcements for you guys? The only announcement that I noticed, some things have changed a little bit on the news. Kim sometimes joins us live. Sometimes she records a little bit later, and that's because we are recording at different times. I am also in different locations, and that's by choice. I'm visiting some family over the summer and just want to, hang out with the people that I care about, and we're doing a little bit of traveling. So I wanted to give you a heads up. This week on the news, I will be on the news, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but if the lighting looks a little bit different, if the audio sounds a little bit different, I'm actually recording from 2 different hotel rooms on Wednesday and Friday. As we speak right now, I'm at a family member's house in their bedroom. I'm using a different microphone. It's a different setup. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. One of the things I love about my job is that I can do it from wherever. And I am really pushing that to the limit. I am learning all sorts of things when you get me out of my traditional studio environment. And it's been fun, actually. I've had to really use my brain in different ways, and I do appreciate that. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. If things look a little bit different, it's because I'm traveling. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in today's episode. Of course, we have our field messenger reports, and our reports for this week come from Uganda, Nigeria. We have a couple reports from the United States as well as Romania. Then in the New Earth, we have some interviews. We're going to talk about the difference between pet symptoms, sometimes you go to a veterinarian and they're like, oh, that's a common symptom, or something, common that a pet is going through. But common doesn't necessarily mean normal. And that's a very important distinction. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're also going to talk about workplace transitions as part of the new earth. What can you expect to change in your workplace environment? Because I know some of you guys are working jobs that you're like, oh, I got to go to work. Ugh. And it may not even be the work that you don't like, but it is the situation. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And we're going to talk about essential oils. Oh, I love essential oils. We're going to talk about how to find quality essential oils and what you should be looking for. In our regional stories, we have lots of stories that we talk about in each newscast. So I boiled these down to, highlighting some of the stories. And I always look for different categories, that some of these stories can fit into. So for this week, we have some housing stories we're going to talk about. We're talking about parents and families and some laws that are created allegedly to help families. We'll see. And then we have some stories about healthcare. And in our world situation report, again, this was an interesting week. Kim was on the news on Monday and Friday. She couldn't make it on Wednesday. We are trying to learn information about her, which it does relate to us. We're going to tie this back in and talk about how, the dark doesn't really understand the light. So if you're working for the light, the dark isn't really going to understand you. And that's actually a good thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We are going to talk about how the deep state was preparing for this large influx of money to come in on July 4th. Did that actually happen? They also claimed that the stock market was going to collapse. Did the stock market collapse in the U.S.? I think you guys know the answer to that. That's a lot of hype that didn't happen. And just the complete chaos that's going on right now. Because again, the deep state is making promises after promises. Oh, you were going to have money this date. Oh, we're going to pay operatives this date. And it just doesn't happen. So we're going to give you an update on all of that, everything that's going on there. And I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Today is July 6, 2024. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, now it's time for our field messenger reports, and our field messengers are so important to what we do here at UNN. They are everyday people like you that are going out in their community and just sharing what's going on. They take out their cell phones, they tell us in their own words what's going on. They don't have any special training. They just have an interest in reporting the truth, and that's what we're all after, right? If you would like more information on how to become one of our amazing field messengers, you can go to our website at unitednetwork.earth, and we have a whole section. You can review some content, but like I said, this is just you being you and you telling us what's happening in your community. So we have a couple of field messenger reports in each newscast. On Monday, we had a report from Mwanda Michael out of Uganda, and he talks about a center in Uganda, in eastern Uganda. It's called St. Paul and Rose Children's Home Center, and they work really hard to provide for the local children. They provide food for local children. They help them raise funds for their education. Mwanda shows us a garden that they planted because, they can't afford to buy everything at the local market. So they're working to help with their education in a lot of different ways. And feeding the children is really important. Sometimes these people don't have food when they go home. So if their kids are going to go to a school, that can be one way of drawing more children in, is by saying, hey, we're going to feed your kids as well. So Mwanda shows us exactly what's going on in his community with this center and how they're helping the children. Also on Monday, Ogwumba Obasi, he is from Nigeria. He talks about land regulations in Anwana, which is in southeast Nigeria. And I found this report really interesting. So this has to do with who owns the land, so the allocation of the land, transfer of the land, use, management of property rights. It's very, very different in various parts of the world. What we do here in the United States looks very, very different than what they're doing in Nigeria. And I love this story because this is really about people coming together. They have certain sections of the land that they manage, and we actually see video of people working and, on the land in their section that they're responsible for. And then the community can thrive from everybody pitching in and doing something. So this is just one way of handling land management, and it's very interesting to see how different people do it. We may find ourselves in a situation moving forward that we take a look at our rules that are currently in place in our respective countries and go, you know what, there might be a better way of doing this. And so I love stories like this that really get us thinking. And then on Wednesday, we have a report from Mike in Louisiana, which is a state in the United States. And Mike talks about living in abundance, specifically with his garden. He says his garden has experienced unprecedented growth. As we've talked about, many different things have happened here on our planet to make our planet more healthy, and things that would hold us back or even holding other living organic beings back, such as plants, have been removed, and we're starting to see things thrive. Now, I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that's happening in our own personal lives, but we are starting to see this happen. And I think this was a very encouraging report from Mike, giving us a tour of his thriving garden. Also on Wednesday, we had Kaylin. So Kaylin does the intros on the news for our Field Messenger reports, and he did his own report. He's talking about canine training. So Kaylin has a dog, and he took us to the training facility for his dog and showed us how you can train your dog. Maybe that's something you're interested in. I know in my house, we have some behavioral issues happening with our dog. So that may be something that we consider, along with a lot of energy work and some other things that are going on. So thank you, Kaylin, for your report. And then on Friday, we had two reports. So Monica from Romania. This is actually, she didn't present it as a two-part story, but if you remember, I believe it was last week, maybe the week before, she talked about the Romanian sculptor Brancusi. Constantine Brancusi is his name. And in the first story that she did a couple weeks ago, she toured his home and his hometown and did a whole report on this. Well, I feel like this is kind of part two. So she talks more about his work as a sculptor. In fact, there are some outdoor sculptures that she shows us. And he's a very interesting sculptor because it's not just about the art. He really tries to get people to experience this inner harmony and connect to the divine through his work. And she shows us how he was able to do that when he was alive. And our second report on Friday is from Leah, and she is in Missouri during this report. She is actually in a place called the Ozarks, which is in the United States. She takes us to Johnson's Shut-In State Park, again in the Ozarks. It's just a beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go to the Ozarks in Missouri, I highly recommend it. And what she's showing us, it's just a tranquil landscape. This is located, by the way, in southeastern Missouri. And she tells us a little bit more about the park's history and its natural beauty. Let's talk about the new Earth. So this is where our planet is going. I know sometimes it's hard to see the future. It's hard to, when you see the headlines from mainstream and even alternative media, it's hard to really think past these headlines that they throw at you, because it seems like it's all gloom and doom about, like elections and war and famine and, cost of living crisis and all this kind of stuff. But really, that's a bit of a facade, because what's really happening on this planet is beautiful. I know it's taking a little bit longer than a lot of us would like, but major changes are happening, and it's important for all of us. Like if you're listening to this podcast right now, I really do believe that you're one of the people that are supposed to help usher in this light age, this golden age that we talk about. And it's a difficult job because it's about looking past what you see, happening right in front of you and knowing that you're here for another purpose. And there's really amazing things on the way. So as part of the New Earth, we interview somebody and then we have some stories to encourage and uplift you. So let's go through the interviews first. On Monday, we have Jeff Feynman. He was on the newscast. He is a holistic veterinarian. And I thought this was a great report because it's about, when your dog or cat, your pet, gets some sort of diagnosis or, you bring them in and you hear the dreaded words, at least they're dreaded words in my mind, of, oh, that's common. I don't know. I get frustrated with that. I also get frustrated when I take my kids to a pediatrician and the pediatrician's like, oh, that's common. I'm like, I don't think our bodies are supposed to operate that way. And I feel the same way about our pets. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. And that's a very important distinction. And so we talk with Jeff about what this means and what does this look like. So I encourage you guys to check out that segment. On Wednesday, we chatted with Karen Sherwood. She is a business and career consultant, and she talks about the transitions that are taking place in the workforce right now. And I love how she worded it. She says, our current system takes more than it gives, which is accurate, right? For most of us. We go to our job, we're like, oh my goodness, I got to go back the next day. It's very energy consuming, right? Even if you don't have a demanding job energetically, it still takes a lot out of you. Well, we are now transitioning from a system that takes more than it gives. And we are learning to step into our own power. We're learning to understand and trust our own authority and know that when we go to work, that we are giving, but we should also be receiving. And if we're not, we may need to make some changes, but this is where things are going. And it's important to know this in advance. And then on Friday, our interview was with Stephanie Ariel. She is a certified aromatherapist and she has her own business. And we talk about quality essential oils because there's so many people out there selling essential oils. How do you know what to look for? And how do you know you're getting a good deal? The prices are all over the place. You could search online and, find what appears to be the same type of essential oil for, I don't know, a few bucks all the way up to like $60. It's all over the place. So we talk with Stephanie about what to look for, especially if you're looking for quality essential oils. All right, let's talk about some stories that are more focused on where our planet is going. Because we're headed in a great direction, guys. And we have to sometimes be revitalized, learn about what other people are doing, because a lot of the stuff isn't reported in mainstream media, but there's some really cool things going on. So let's talk about duck farming, which you may not have heard of before. This is an agricultural technique. It's known as integrated duck farming, and it is making a comeback. So here's how it works. Naturally, as ducks walk in fields, they tear up the weeds, they prey on different pests, and they leave behind manure as organic fertilizer. This is a good thing. So if farmers basically let ducks do what ducks do, then farmers can eliminate the need for pesticides, for herbicides, and artificial fertilizers. And if you think this is a new process, well, it's been around since ducks have been around. But as far as using it and really understanding what's going on, this was documented back in China 600 years ago. So you're going to see a lot of things start to change. We're going to regress, not in a negative way, but really let nature do what nature does. And this is just one example of that. Next, let's talk about an innovative prisoner in Panama. So a prisoner, this was a while back, designed a unique waste recycling system at the prison that collects, separates, recycles, and then sells some of the waste. The food waste is composted for the prison's gardens, and then the plastic and aluminum are sold. And then get this, this is great. They also donate 1,500 tree seedlings a year to help with reforestation. 500 prisoners now recycle 80% of the prison's waste, and they do this to help reduce their sentences. After being pardoned in 2016, the founder, the creator of the project, founded a nonprofit that employs former inmates to also help with the program. So you have the people that are currently in jail helping, and then you have people on the outside. He hires former inmates to help with this program. And here's the cool thing. No one so far that has been in the program has reoffended, which makes you think maybe we're not doing the jail system or the prison system the way that really rehabilitates and helps people so they can lead better lives. Just saying. maybe that's going on, right? All right, and our final story as part of the New Earth is about people in South Africa who are transforming their city's public spaces using a very popular video game. At least it's very popular here in the US. You probably have heard of it. It's called Minecraft. With Minecraft, users create structures with virtual blocks, and it's become a powerful tool for city design. 47 young residents have identified key city issues, and then a group of 15 went on to design a stadium park using Minecraft. The project shows how involving youth and city planning ensures future developments. It also meets the needs of all the residents and empowers the next generation. Now it's time for our regional news, and these are stories from around the world. It's to give you an idea of what's currently happening across our planet. Some of these stories are going to be things that you may have heard in the news before. We only pick stories that directly impact the people. We're not really interested in what the government has to say or some talking head on TV. What is actually going to impact people just like you. And that's what we report on. And we have about 15 stories in each newscast. And what I try to do on this podcast is divide things up according to categories. What are some common categories or, groups of topics that I've seen throughout the stories this week? So we've got 3. We've got some housing stories. We have stories involving laws and parents and families. And then we have some healthcare stories. So let's get to it. Our first story is about affordable housing in Kenya, which is in Africa. It remains out of reach for many Kenyans, and this is despite the government's plan to build 250,000 houses annually. There is still a 2 million unit deficit, obviously causing a bunch of problems. Most urban Kenyans live in informal settlements without basic infrastructure. Now, they are using new technologies like 3D printing, which is helping to build houses faster, and it's also lowering the cost, yet these still remain unaffordable for a lot of people. There has been a new housing tax passed by Parliament. This was done almost a year ago in June of 2023, and they're hoping that helps to make funds more affordable, but it's facing some legal challenges. All right, another housing story involves South London. A squatters group is occupying abandoned buildings to help shelter the homeless. And this is highlighting the housing crisis in the UK right now. Buildings once abandoned are now being refurbished. They are providing beds and basic necessities like water and electricity. And this is interesting. So rent in England has surged 22% in the last 5 years. This has forced many people, especially young people, to live with their parents or to share houses. They say minorities are hit the hardest, with reports indicating more than 3 times of those people, so minority people, are likely to face homelessness. In Australia, we have a story about power bills and specifically solar panels. Australians with solar panels are facing new costs due to an excess of daytime solar power. So starting this month, households and parts of New South Wales will face new charges for exporting solar power to the grid between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Homes that export more than the threshold may see a reduction in their feed-in tariffs. Now, there are also incentives to supply power during peak demand times, which is between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. All right, moving on to parents and families. So in Sierra Leone, they have passed a new law criminalizing marriage for anyone under 18. The law aims to protect children, primarily girls, from a practice that affects their rights as well as their development. In Sierra Leone, 30% of girls and 4% of boys marry before the age of 18. And this can be a problem. Child marriage has a tendency to lead to high adolescent pregnancy rates, which can result in pregnancy complications, which is the leading cause of death for girls 15 to 19 years old. Sweden has introduced a new law allowing grandparents to take paid parental leave for up to 3 months of a child's first year. Parents can transfer up to 45 days of their leave per child to the grandparents, or 90 days if they are a single parent. Under the system, Swedish parents receive 480 days of parental benefit per child. Boy, that's nice. We don't have that in the United States. With compensation based on their full income for 390 days and a fixed rate for the remaining 90 days. This new law provides more flexibility and support for families. In Australia, a recent audit reveals almost half of the state's fertility samples are at risk of misidentification. This has prompted a massive purge of frozen sperm. This issue endangers key genetic information and medical records, which is raising concerns about potential accidental incest. An audit found systemic issues affecting the quality and safety of these samples, with 42% of donations, eggs, and embryos having traceability problems. Okay, let's move on to healthcare. I've got a few more stories for you guys. India's drug regulator has inspected more than 400 pharmaceutical plants due to concerns related to deadly cough syrups. It has shut down 36% of these facilities for failing to meet safety standards because there are quality concerns after cough syrups containing toxic chemicals led to child deaths in a few different countries: Gambia, Uzbekistan, and Cameroon. India's 41 billion pharmaceutical industry now faces scrutiny due to these incidents. In Singapore, 1.5 million adults will receive cash in August to help with their daily living expenses. The amounts will be either $450 or $850, depending on their home's annual value. And this is a reported increase from last year. Citizens 21 and older with an annual income of up to $34,000 will qualify, but those with more than one property will not. These payments are part of the Goods and Services Tax Voucher Plan, and it is aimed at the impact of the recent goods and services tax hikes. And our final story is about prescription drug costs in the United States. It has increased by 37% during the past decade. Now, this is a problem. It has left many Americans struggling to afford their medications. Many people are now paying more out of pocket as insurance companies cover fewer prescriptions and they are adding more restrictions. Americans face tough choices, which is either pay the higher cost or leave their prescriptions unfilled. More than 50 million Americans have had to abandon their prescriptions due to this high cost. Now it's time for the World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. Like I said earlier, this was an interesting week, a very busy week, and we knew this was going to be a crazy week because of the 4th, July 4th. Now here in the U.S., where I'm at, that is a holiday. It's an important day for many Americans. It is supposed to be the day that the Declaration of Independence was signed. I don't actually think that's the actual day it was signed, but it represents our country's independence. And I say that loosely because we know that we're slaves still. You know, all of us were slaves. The United States had the illusion of democracy and independence, but really that was just a front, right? But it's still a good time to get together with friends and family. That's not exactly what the deep state was doing. They were expecting to get a lot of money because historically, this is the time period where countries all around the world were paid for these orders that would go out. So it would start off at the top with non-human entities, and the orders would come down, and then it would ultimately get to governments and politicians and things like that, and they needed money to complete these tasks. So, as you know, the deep state has been looking for money. All governments are broke, and some of these people will believe just about anything in order to get money or on the hopes of getting money, and it's really just not working out very well for them. However, on Monday, Kim talked about a group of people that she met with, a very small group of people, and these people were not part of the deep state, but the deep state, see, they're trying to figure out who Kim is and how she can do what she does. And so she tells this story. I'm not going to play a soundbite of her story. You'll have to check out Monday's newscast for that. But she tells the story of how they were supposed to meet in one location, and she went there, saw the people she was supposed to meet with, left them a note and said, hey, I can't meet. Sorry about that. But in the note said, hey, meet me at another location. And she met them in a different location. They were able, to have their meeting. But what was really interesting is how these people, these other deep state people, they were like scrambling because they were there at the initial location. And when she changed things up on them, they had to completely move. And she said they were taking pictures. It was just a kind of a very weird thing because they're trying to figure out who she is and what she does and how does she do this. In the past, like a human has not had these abilities that Kim has over what used to be the alpha system, what is now the light system. They don't understand why a human has these capabilities. Why isn't, it's some sort of alien race as it's been in the past? Or does Kim have some sort of extraterrestrial weird thing crawling up inside of her? We know that is a thing that, the deep state does. The answer is no, by the way. So they're trying to figure out what in the world is she? How does she do this? So it's kind of an interesting story. The soundbite that I want to play for you, though, it's a little bit of a pep talk that Kim gives. So she had this experience, right? And she's very confusing to the deep state. And what she learned through this whole process is when you do things your own way, when you're able to connect with the Creator in your own way, when you're not reliant on their systems and their programs, which, teach you how to do some things, but it's not using the light, right? It's using the dark. You really confuse them, which means the deep state's going to be confused for a very long time because more and more people are stepping into their power. And it's just a neat little story that Kim shares about the importance of doing things your own way. Don't necessarily look for gurus out there that are going to, sell you some course or whatever on how to connect with Source, or how to remote view. You already know this. It's about tapping into what you already know. And there's not one way to do it. And I thought it was an important message. So here is Kim talking about doing things your own way.
I'm going to talk about something which I think is important for all of you to understand, even if obviously, you weren't in any kind of program, but there's a lot of programmed information out there as well. So let's talk about the reason why I am confusing to the government. The government has done extensive research in cooperation, governments plural, this is not just the United States, the Russians, the Chinese, everybody. We all know about deep underground military bases and a lot of interaction that happened between humans and different alien races.
Yeah.
And some of those programs involved how to train your human. So how to teach your human that may already exhibit somewhat of a psychic ability, and then they put them through these programs such as the Jedi program. Or if you're been around for a while, you've seen the movie Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, and then the LSD programs, Project Moon, I think it's Moonlight. You know, there's a lot of programs out there centered around psychic abilities, using drugs as enhancement. And, you know, we've seen it all on the internet. But the information on how to do this and how to create these drugs and what can you do to manipulate humans into doing things for you came from alien races. And not ones that were friendly to humans.
Right.
And most of the time, the information came from people that were trying to control humans. Now, the programs are extensive, and they are all geared around doing things in such a way that involve a third-party entity or a third-party medication of some sort. And the people that are admitted to these programs already have some kind of skill of their own, and they're just amplifying those skills. So a lot of people have those kind of skills naturally. Doesn't mean everybody goes into a government program, but the information that was given to them is much like how militaries give information to other countries' militaries. So the United States quite often will go in and quote unquote help a country, you know, fight the bad people, insert bad people name here, you know, Taliban or whoever the latest and greatest boogeyman is. And they'll come right in and then they'll train their militaries, you know, kind of like Syria and some other places in Africa. And they give them equipment and that type of thing so they can, quote unquote, defend themselves should there ever be an uprising of insert boogeyman name here.
Yeah.
But the United States never gives out equipment that they can't overcome with something else they have. They also never give them information about tactics and how to do, you know, run this type of an operation, that type of an operation that they can't overcome or already know what they're going to do. And that's Warfare 101. You know, you never know when someone might be your enemy. And it's the same thing with gurus online. You know, people are, the New Age movement many years ago started with a bunch of information that was put out there by some of these government programs, believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe
and there are still gurus out there that are giving information based on government program training. And some of these people, I can give you some examples of people that do this. You know, and I don't like to talk badly about people online, but there's a guy that talks about the light system, and we'll leave it at that. He's one of those people that was trained in one of those programs, does have skills, don't get me wrong, is probably communicating with people he thinks are good guys, trying to do the right thing for people, but he puts out a lot of stuff out there that's, you know, instead of doing something about it, you know, we're all going to die of the next pandemic, and this is when it's going to start, blah, 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 you know, and there's going to be an invasion. But the same thing that I'm seeing on my side of it, coming from people who actually do want to kill us all, you know, or corral us, or whatever it is they're trying to do, are the same people that's giving him this information. So who's positive and who's not?
Yeah.
But again, I don't think the guy's a bad guy. There are other folks out there too with a hodgepodge of information that have been in these programs, and they are all over YouTube and Rumble and all of that, giving you inside information, telling you, we remote viewed this and we remote viewed that. And some of them, even recently in the last 6 months, there were some people online when we were going through that whole changeover to the new UNN. They said that they remote viewed, and I'm on a hill, and I got wonderful views, and in my huge closet, and all of this stuff, And let me just set the record straight for you. I just don't. At the same time, these same people were validated, but the other people are putting an address online that looks like it couldn't be anything further from the truth. It's a tiny little place. It's not big. It's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the information kind of conflicted there. These people made me look like I'm a rock star. The other people are saying, look at this little tiny place and, all that kind of thing. But the point is that the way that they're trained to think and what they're trained to look for in a person with extraordinary skills or has been trained to have extraordinary skills doesn't necessarily mean that they can actually look in on someone who has actual skills.
Mm-hmm.
A perception from someone like that or a psychic rarely works on someone that actually has skills.
Yeah.
Number one, someone who actually has skills will have themselves shielded and blocked like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
You don't have any idea how many people have called me and said, we've been having a psychic conversation and I've looked into your energy. I'm like, oh, heck no, you didn't. Because I have to be super ultra protected all the time. All the time. Because if not, these people are going to creep in and probably could kill me this way.
Yeah.
But they're predictable because there is only one program that actually does this. And those programs are either defined by government level, these are your average everyday people that are recruited, or SSP level. So it's pretty easy to, once you have a copy of it, which of course it's in the system, because it had to be funded by somewhere.
Yeah.
And once you understand those programs, then they're easy to defend yourself against.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as far as myself, in order for me to do what I do, and even sometimes it creeps in, and I'm not saying it's from these types of people. This was really bad during the days when the covens were around and the Sanhedrins were around, and well, they learn a lot from the demons that they conjure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a constant communication with them and their demon brood, so to speak. So the demons know how to try to get in there, try to attack you, and they're not program people, so there's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
We still have some of those people around, not the covens or anything like that, but people that practice black magic that probably know a little more than some others. So the defenses are always there. They're always up. The energy shields are always up. And, and I know a lot of you do the same thing. You probably are pretty sensitive, some of you, and you know how to do the same thing to prevent those attacks. But the problem that I see in the regular world with regular people, even highly skilled people, we tend to lock ourselves into someone else's way of making that connection to source. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's because you're going to a building and you're talking to those people, or you're talking to some Buddhist person or some enlightened guru or whatever it is. It's somebody else's recipe.
Yeah.
And recipes work great if you're trying to bake a cake. I have baked a successful cake with this recipe or this pie or whatever, and it works. And then some of you look at the pie and you say, okay, well, this was a great pie, but it sure could use a little pinch of this or a little add of that, or I think I'm going to use a different pie crust next time, or whatever it is. And you start to morph that into your own.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing goes for people that teach things online. This is the way. This is the way to enlightenment. This is the frequency, and you must meditate, and you have to sit in this position or go and, because that's what works for them. But it's not going to be the same for everybody, and everybody's experience isn't going to be the same. And some of that is based on the other side of your brain. So for those of you that have grown up in religion, maybe you're religious now, maybe you're not before, but maybe you're not anymore. But we have this vision of what God looks like because the movies have told us what it looks like. Mm-hmm. We have this vision of, what Jesus looks like, or Buddha looks like, or whatever, looks like, Nirvana, in other, and sometimes people tend to think, in some ways, like some people say, well, I'm talking to my higher self. I asked my higher self. Mm-hmm. And all you're really doing is asking yourself, because it's still yourself. Yeah. Meaning you're tapping into your wisdom. That's what you're doing. You're tapping into your source given wisdom to ask yourself what's good for you or bad for you, or should I do this or should I do that? But that's sovereignty, though, too. Instead of calling up somebody else and asking somebody to read your tarot cards or do whatever, to try to, when you have a big and difficult decision to make. It's not to say that that's not great to do sometimes, mm-hmm. but, and some people have people they trust and, they get the information, but there's nothing better than the wisdom that's coming through. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, we can say we're too close to the situation. I'm not going to think objectively because I really love this person and I don't want to say that to this person, or I love these people. I don't want to stop going to this group, even though I feel weird when I'm there, mm-hmm. So I guess the message here on this part of it is you have to do you in your way. You have to do your things and your connections and your remote viewing or whatever skills you possess or want to possess in your way. You know you.
I love this message from Kim because I feel like it takes a lot of pressure off of us. It's not about finding the right information out there. We're always looking outside of ourselves. And really what we need to do is look internally because we have these answers. We know how to do this. If we were out of our human bodies and just experiencing the universe as spirit, all this would come back to us. We do have some limitations that we've got to get through, and we agreed to do this, and here we are on planet Earth, right? On Wednesday, Kim actually wasn't on the news, so Wednesday would have been the day before the 4th of July. That would have been the 3rd of July. As I said, the 4th of July was the big day. That Thursday was the big day that everyone was expecting huge payouts, that everything was going to turn back and the dark was going to regain control and receive a lot of money to do their nefarious deeds. They did not get their money. Surprise, surprise. Also, there were threats of the stock market in the United States crashing. That did not collapse. And there were weird things, threats about power outages, 10 days of darkness, this. I know that's a big thing with the white hats. None of that happened. So, the deep state is in chaos. None of their plans are working. And on top of that, Friday was a new moon. The clip that I want to play for you guys today, because, I could play a clip of all the craziness that the deep state did, but I don't want to dwell on the negative. What I want to focus on is something that Kim found. So she's been doing a lot of cleaning and clearing, and it's been a bit frustrating for all of us because she would clear something and it would be gone, and then the next day it would be back. And it's like, wait, we just cleared that, and it kind of feels like Groundhog Day for all of us, right? And she had what she believes is a breakthrough. That's what I want to focus on, right? I want to keep this very positive. Who wants to hear about the deep state? Let's talk about really cleaning things and keeping it clear so we can, humanity, can start our part of the restoration process, right? So here's a clip that I want to share with you. And Kim calls it an update on systems. It's about pulling soul keystones. It's very interesting. Take a listen.
We've told you about the fact that we put transmuters on the dark system so that we could fully integrate the light system without any issues or any problems. And we kept doing this ebb and flow thing. We'd get to like 98, 99%, and then it would go back to like 50%, and then it would go forward a little bit, back a little bit. And it was doing the same thing for Earth. We feel like we're on an energetic roller coaster. And if you feel like that, this is the reason why. Because I can't figure out where it's coming from. And I think we finally have figured out the secret, I hope, to why they believe information is going to come through. So at one point in time, I told you, I think it was like last week, about Elon Musk saying that these humans think they're going to transfer their consciousness into an AI system and live forever, and then choose to transfer that consciousness into another vessel, a body or whatever, and then, become, I guess, gods or whatever they believe, or immortal. Now, that program doesn't work anymore, and I am not so sure they would have allowed them to do that anyway, even when the parties that ran the program actually could do it. And actually were still with us. But others that transfer their consciousness into computer systems, I would say even before death, would be people like, or folks, I should say, because these aren't people, Lucifer, the Red Queen, whose real name was Artemis. You guys remember a few years back, everybody talking about the Artemis Accords or the Jupiter Accords. Remember those? Guess who signed those and who they signed up with? Yes, a fifth-level lower astral demon that at the time had some gatekeeper capabilities way back in 2018 when those agreements were signed. Now, that party is no longer with us, but her consciousness, to some degree, was spread far and wide. So we talked months ago about alien technology and how it runs, and the effects of alien technology on this planet, not only on the planet, but also off the planet, and definitely within AI systems. So can you imagine someone transferring their, I guess, business, essence, energy, and so forth into a, for lack of a better term, let's call it a sphere. The spheres are larger than the one. There's a picture out there with Trump and the Saudi Arabian king, I think it is at the time, around the sphere, and everybody's like, what is the sphere? What is the sphere? They're much larger than that usually. Unless they come in a beltway or whatever. But normally the consciousness that's in that ball, if it's dark, then it belongs to, say, a fraction of or a portion of the consciousness of the Red Queen or Artemis. Or maybe it was Marduk's consciousness, or maybe it's Lucifer's consciousness in totality. Now, humans on this planet can become personally affected by the consciousness of another being. Also, if the consciousness still exists, and the essence still exists, and the energy still exists, you can actually see it almost sometimes forming a it looks like a giant blob of plasma, for lack of a better term, and that giant blob of plasma can be formed from only a portion, for example, of a being's essence, energy, or consciousness. Now, couldn't figure out why are we still cleaning? I mean, we have cleaned so much stuff, and then there'll be stuff that's not there today, but I'd wake up tomorrow morning and there's more stuff. And it turns out that these consciousness balls and soul cubes and all kinds of things they put themselves into, predominantly from the lower astral, or the null zone, which is the space in between lower astral and the upper astral. And they transfer it into, for example, the Omega system or the Chronos system, or sometimes they can even transfer it to a planet such as Earth. And then the being still exists. Therefore, it can still make decisions to create things on its own, as long as energy is still being transmuted into a dark energy. But theirs still existed until it's used up completely. It's no longer powering that being, but they could actually replicate this process thousands, if not millions of times for each being. The same thing goes for the Abraxas. Marduk, Enki, and Enlil. The consciousness is out there. It's still making, quote unquote, decisions to make my life miserable. I'm sure they didn't do that for me, but, it's a war fought with attrition. If we can wear the light people down, wear the light workers down, we can continuously do this infinitely, they felt, with this process. Now, this is part of the reason why I don't believe they would have offered this same service to the people like Elon Musk or the people like the Palabensinis or the Orsinis. And the reason why I don't think that they would have allowed for this immortal process to happen is because these people don't think very highly of them. And quite frankly, neither do I. What value would it be putting their brain into a sentient AI, or their consciousness, so to speak, into a sentient AI, and let them keep making decisions like the ones they're making now? That would be a no. That would even be a no from an evil alien race. That would be a no. Who would want those people? They don't make decisions. Look at what they're doing. They can't even get orders and instructions right, that were detailed out to the letter, predominantly because without one of these beings, you're never going to make it. But when things start to reinstall themselves, it's frustrating. I'm like, where did this come from? Oh, this was something left behind by Marduk as an example. But was it really? Is it just an ongoing standing order from the consciousness? The answer to the question turns out to be actually yes. So by pulling all of those keystones that were tied to their souls from systems this weekend and throughout the morning this morning, I should say the week. I keep saying it's the weekend. I don't know why I think yesterday was Sunday. I still do for some reason. Okay, over the day yesterday and the day before and this morning as well, now we're going somewhere because things are not reinstalling themselves anymore. Now, what that did for the deep state is it gave the deep state hope. They would see a glimmer of something showing up underneath HSBC in Hong Kong, or Wells Fargo in San Francisco, or the Federal Reserve, or something under Langley. And they would think, oh, here it comes, just as it promised us, And then it goes away. Well, still the gatekeeper over here. And because this other party whose consciousness existed is not the gatekeeper anymore, it doesn't have the ability to allow things to come in and manifest into reality anymore. But pulling all of the soul keystones, now that is going to make a big difference, because no longer should they, as long as we make sure we got them all, and this is still a work in progress for today for me, as long as we make sure we got them all, then that means that there'll be no more regeneration of things that we have taken out, and no more days ending in Y for the deep state for them to think that something is going to appear, or to wreak havoc on the planet for a while, so much so we have to clean it up. And it's not just this planet, it goes everywhere sometimes. So I'm really happy with the progress of that. And what we did yesterday appears to be 100% spot on pulling these stones, because we're not having that regeneration that we saw before. Now, on the flip side of it, we had some neutral stuff that was still showing up in places like Eagle Mountain, Yellowstone Park, and a few other places. And in northern New Mexico, Utah area, it was kind of a large area. And those things were also removed this morning as well. So let's just keep our fingers crossed there and hope that this little experiment, because this is something that's never been done before, and we asked about it, asked some others about it as well, the Universal Council, to see if this was something that's ever happened. So we could try to, before we did it, we wanted to obviously make sure we weren't going to have a negative fallout from doing so. So thus far, it seems to be going very well. So I'm happy with the results of that, and I'm happy with our progress there. Hopefully, I will no longer have to deal with things regenerating themselves and trying to reattach themselves to the light system from here on out.
I thought that was really encouraging news. I hope you guys do too. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to Kim's report on Monday because, like all of you, I find out pretty much right when it comes out of Kim's mouth. So the stuff that you're seeing on the news is my legitimate reaction to hearing news for the first time coming from Kim. So there you go. That's the news for the past week. What do you do now? I know we talked about a lot of different things, and a lot of it can be kind of mind-blowing. Do your research, okay? See if you can search for some of the stuff that we talked about online. I know they scrub stuff, but there's still information out there. Always have an open mind. If some of the stuff we talked about today really just doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. Just put it aside for now. Maybe it will make sense a little bit further down the line once you receive additional information or once something else becomes more clear to you. Or maybe it's just something that you don't need to be concerned about right now. Always, though, keep asking questions. Think critically. Use your brain. And more than 10% of it. I can't wait till we get to the point where we're using all of our brain, right? We should have been doing that all along. And if today's podcast made sense to you and you really want to share it with other people that you care about, we would really appreciate that. For more information about us, you can go to our website at unitednetwork.earth. That gives you on-demand access when you become a member to all of our UNN newscasts, our complete world situation reports, and our original series. And we also have United Chat. That's our online community, which is available through our app. We encourage you guys to check that out. And you can also follow us on social media. We've got a great team that puts out clips from our World Situation Report, the New Earth stories, some of our Field Messenger reports, and you can share those with people online. That would be amazing. Thanks so much for listening today, guys. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.